It's Monday night, and we're in the NFC North for a classic showdown between the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. Are the Vikings doomed for regression after last year's 14-3 season? Is this the year the Bears finally turned their offseason crown into real wins? Doubtful. We'll find out in the simulation, but first, let's make today's cocktail a Southside Bootlegger.
This was one of the easiest drinks to make and name so far, which is a huge relief because next week's drink for the game between the Commanders and Packers is giving me fits. It makes sense that two teams so geographically close to each other would have compatible drinks, but in this case, the two drinks are actually related and they have names that fit together well.
And they were roommates.
Anyways, enough yapping. Time to make like Al Capone and get into some Chicago booze. Now, I know I said both drinks had strong connections to their locations, but I am cheating just a little bit with Chicago's drink, the Southside Fizz. That's because despite all the stories about this drink being created by Chicago's Southside mobsters during Prohibition to cover up their shit booze, this drink was actually created in New York City.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Yes. Despite the articles you'll find online claiming that the drink was a favorite of Al Capone, I have yet to find a single reputable source for that claim. However, what we do have is New York bartender Hugo Enslin's 1916 cocktail book, Recipes for Mixed Drinks, which does have a recipe for this drink. Remember, Prohibition didn't start until 1920, making this 4 years before the earliest possible start date in Chicago, and 9 years before Al Capone became leader of the Chicago outfit. So instead of existing to cover up bootleg gin, this drink actually started as a variant of the mint julep, which is evident when you look into its actual spec. It's a pretty straightforward drink. Muddle some mint, mix that with gin, lime juice, simple syrup, shake it up, serve it over ice. If you serve it down in a rocks glass, you have the Southside, and then if you serve it in a highball and top it off with some seltzer water, then you get the Southside Fizz. Now, Minnesota's unofficial state cocktail, the Bootleg, is actually a variant of a Southside. When I was first researching these drinks, I actually had a really hard time telling them apart, right? So the Southside is gin, lime juice, simple syrup, and mint, with optional seltzer water. The Bootleg is gin, bootleg mix, and seltzer water. Well, what is bootleg mix? This is basically a sweetened mint limeade. So lemon juice, lime juice, mint, and then whatever sweetener you use, typically like a honey or a simple syrup or even agave syrup if you want to use that. So initially you might sort of look at these two drinks and say, are those really two separate drinks or just two drinks wearing different jerseys? And personally, where I think the Bootleg sort of stands out from the Southside is in its flexibility. The Southside is very much locked into using gin, whereas a Bootleg can use gin, vodka, bourbon, pretty much whatever base spirit you have on hand. Also, whereas the Southside is typically made as a singular cocktail to be served in a bar, the Bootleg is often made as a sort of party drink where you make a big thing of bootleg mix and then create, many cocktails for everybody at the party. So obviously it's going to be pretty easy to combine these two drinks, considering how closely related they are, but I still wanted to make sure that this drink had an identity of its own. The two big additions are both going to come courtesy of Bruce's Bitters bootleg mix recipe, which I'll put a link to down in the description. So when I made this, for the Bears, instead of using like a simple syrup, I used honey because we all know that bears love honey. And for the Vikings, we have some butterfly pea flower powder, which is this really cool little pH reactive ingredient that is mostly just used for turning drinks purple. So that'll give us a little Viking purple in there. If you've never used it before, it's basically just crushed up flower petals that, like I said, are pH reactive, so they turn different colors based on what the pH of the drink is. I did run a little test with our bootleg mix to confirm that the color of the drink would come out to like a nice purple and not something more like a deep blue. So we should be good, but I have not tried the actual drink itself yet because, as always, the first time I try these drinks is when I actually make them here on the show. I sort of think through the recipe and I might try portions of it, but all of these are totally blind taste tests. So the final spec for this drink, the bootleg mix recipe, again, that'll be in the description. but this is basically equal parts lemon juice, lime juice, and honey with a good amount of mint leaves put in there and then blend it all up. So we are going to take our shaker, add an ice cube to it, and then we're going to start with 2 ounces of gin. I'm really running low on my gin here. I hope I have 2 ounces left in it. Let's see. Moment of truth time. Woo! Oh, that is literally 2 ounces on the dot. Look at that. That is absolutely perfect. Excellent. And then we are going to do 1.5 ounces of our bootleg mix. Right in there. And then 1/4 teaspoon of our butterfly pea flower powder. You really don't need a lot of this stuff to get a good color on your drink. And thankfully it doesn't actually really taste like anything, so you don't have to worry about it throwing off the flavor of your drink too much. Give that a good shake. Alright. And now originally I was going to serve this drink in a highball, but I have these really cute little mason jars that have a little bee on them, and it just felt right, you know, it's matching that sort of summertime vibe. I am going to double strain this because we have all of that sort of blended up mint in our bootleg mix, and I don't really like the sort of texture that you can get. I think it can be quite grainy, and we might also have clumps from the butterfly pea flower powder, so double strain that in. Go. You can see all of that mint that just got caught in our strainer right there. And that would otherwise be caught in your teeth. And a nice large ice cube. Woo. Here we go. And then finally, top with our seltzer water. Again, you can use literally any seltzer water. This is just what I happen to have on hand. And look at that color. All right. That right there, the Southside Bootlegger. Let's give it a taste. Ooh. All right, when I added the club soda in, you can actually see there's some pieces of mint that are really tiny, and they got caught up in all of those bubbles and sort of floated to the surface. So there's this very, almost sort of algae-looking layer on top of it. That's pretty funky. That's just delicious. This is such a perfect summertime drink. We've had like a couple 100-degree days here recently, and this is just like AC running through your body. Super cool, super refreshing, very easy drinkable. It kind of reminds me of a mojito in some ways, you know, that like lime and mint dance that you got going on. I think honestly, Beefeater, I like Beefeater as a gin because it is pretty flexible. You can use it with pretty much anything. I would have gone with a more floral gin for this one. I might have done something like Hendrick's for this, because I think you do want those sort of secondary floral notes coming off your gin, but really can't go wrong. This is solid. I'm going to drink this remarkably quickly because it's another hot day today, and this is delicious. So while I enjoy this, let's now get into the simulation.
All right, Bears-Vikings, Week 1 NFC North rivalry match. Bears, obviously, new coach with Ben Johnson, and he schemes up a little offensive treat with Rome Odunze breaking tackles and taking this first play of the game all the way to the house for a 70-yard touchdown. Vikings, much more methodical and reserved in their approach, opening their drive with a nice 13-yard run from Aaron Jones. That very nice run sets up a play-action play on the very next down. After JJ scanning, rolls out to the right side of the pocket, fires a dart to Justin Jefferson, who hauls it in, stumbles a little, but is able to keep going before being brought down at the 20-yard line. After a short gain on first down, the Vikings give the ball back to Aaron Jones, who jukes Jeremiah Walker into a different dimension before easily taking this ball in for a touchdown. Game now tied at 7-7. The Bears respond with another huge completion, this time to DJ Moore. A few plays later, big 4th and 1 for the Bears here, and Caleb Williams says, "Hey, don't forget about my legs," and easily picks up 7 yards on that one. Unfortunately, a clutch Javon Hargraves sack on 2nd down sets up 3rd and long, and with the secondary covering everybody, Caleb is forced to just throw this one away, and the Bears kick a field goal. All this action, and we're not even done with the first quarter. Tired yet? Well, here's a Justin Jefferson jet sweep that goes for a whopping 27 yards thanks to some nice blocking. That sets up 1st and goal from the 9. Play action. JJ booting out of the pocket, boots too far out of the pocket and gets brought down by Austin Booker. That finally brings us to the second quarter, and after this big nothing burger of a play on 3rd down, the Vikings will likewise be forced to kick a field goal, making it a 10-10 game. Meanwhile, on the Bears' next drive, Caleb proves that he is a master of the clutch. 3rd and 12, no problem, here's a dart to Rome Odunze in double coverage. 3rd and 11, no problems. Caleb finds him again in the middle of the field to pick up another 1st down. Finally, 3rd and 3 in the red zone. Vikings defenders make the mistake of turning their back on Caleb, and he scampers in for the score. Later on, 2-minute drill for the Vikings, and JJ McCarthy shows off the white boy wheels, taking off and picking up 24 yards before being annihilated by the Bears defense. That sets up 1st and goal on the 7, where JJ connects with Hawkinson on a short little drag route, tying this game at 17 apiece. After a couple really nice plays put the Vikings at the Bears' 3-yard line, JJ gets hit with analysis paralysis and gets sacked back to the 10. The Bears' red zone stand continues, getting a hit and ultimately almost getting an interception, but forcing the Vikings to settle for 3. A few plays later, the Bears are back in scoring position, with Ben Johnson really making his mark felt on this offense with all these under-center play actions. Caleb Williams, bobbing, weaving, takes off running, getting chased down, but he's not going to be fast enough as Caleb takes it in for the score. Now this next clip is for all of my fellow Spartans out there, as it's Jalen Naylor with the huge 53-yard grab, putting the Vikings right on the Bears' doorstep. 2 plays later, slant to Justin Jefferson, Vikings retake the lead, 27-24. However, the Bears are not going to go quietly under this new Ben Johnson regime, as Caleb Williams finds Colston Loveland on the 5-yard in, who then somehow breaks 2 tackles, getting all the way down to about the 16 before being pushed out of bounds. Very next play, the Bears hand this ball off to DeAndre Swift, who takes it in 12 yards absolutely untouched, putting the Bears back up 31-27. However, the Vikings have the opportunity to snatch this one back. 3rd and 9, a desperation heave to a double-covered Justin Jefferson falls harmlessly to the ground. That sets up a do-or-die 4th and 9. JJ McCarthy dropping back, slings it, and it's TJ Edwards with a game-sealing pass breakup. And there you have it. All the suffering from Bears fans finally pays off a little bit as they beat the Vikings 31-27. Lots of offensive fireworks in this game, so we should have some very interesting stats to dig into. Beginning as we always do with the quarterbacks, I mean really, what more could you want out of both of these sophomore QBs? JJ McCarthy absolutely slung it. 341 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Obviously we don't have a comparison point for him, but if the Vikings can get a first game out of him anywhere near this, they'll be feeling good about their QB situation going forward. A really good game out of Caleb Williams too, who despite having the lower completion percentage, fewer pass yards, and fewer touchdowns, had a higher QB rating than JJ, because QB rating is a fundamentally broken metric that should never be used. Switching over to the rushing stats, we see that Aaron Jones had a productive game with 58 yards and a touchdown. DeAndre Swift, not so much, only 26 yards, and while he did have that nice touchdown, the credit for that one definitely goes to the offensive line and the absolute canyon they opened up in the defense. With the QBs, we again see a case of exaggerated QB runs, though it's not too unrealistic. Caleb Williams put up 72 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as a fumble, which I somehow missed while editing down the raw footage and was too lazy to try and find. Now, 9 rushes for 78 yards is actually very similar to his stat line from the first Green Bay game last year, but the big difference is his rushing touchdowns. Despite rushing for almost 500 yards on the season, he had a whopping 0 rushing touchdowns last year. though he did have 10 fumbles, so that's pretty realistic. And obviously, Justin Jefferson had that one rush, which, while rare, does happen. He's had 13 rushing attempts in the NFL, though typically they don't go for more than 10 yards. Finally, we have receiving, and you know what? I never thought I'd say this, but we have a realistic set of receiving stats, with one major exception. Now, you might think some of these stats are unrealistic. Only 4 catches and 57 yards for Justin Jefferson? Yup, it's a nearly identical stat line to his game against the Giants last year. 4 catches and 84 yards out of wide receiver 3 Jalen Naylor? Check the Detroit game of last season, the first one. Well, DJ Moore having only 2 catches for 47 yards has to be slander, right? Wrong again. He had only 2 catches for 27 yards against the Commanders last year. Now, it is true that 153 yards would be Rome's best game by about 40 yards, but it's not crazy to think that an offensive scheme designed by Ben Johnson could get him there. However, you may have noticed a certain character hauled in 9 catches for 96 yards despite being suspended for the first 3 games of the season. Yeah, that's on me. I trusted that Madden would have up-to-date rosters and just completely missed it, so definitely going to be keeping a closer eye on that going forward. Moving over to the Monte Carlo stats, we again see the typical quarterback regression across both their passing yards and their rushing yards. It gives DeAndre Swift a pretty significant rushing boost and does a very interesting thing for Aaron Jones. See, it does predict fewer rushing yards for Aaron Jones, but not because the Vikings run less. No, instead, this drop comes from the Vikings employing a running back by committee approach, with Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason splitting carries, which is something I've noticed Madden really isn't capable of or willing to do. And you can see that I forgot to remove Jordan Addison from the Monte Carlo sim as well, so gonna fix that for next week. Finally, the scores, not much to say here. The sim predicts a 16-15 Bears victory, with the most common outcome being a 14-14 draw. Once more, Madden and Monte Carlo are in agreement, and Week 1 is looking bright for Bears fans. Do you agree with the simulations, or do you envision a different future? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. As a reminder, our drink for this matchup is the minty and refreshing Southside Bootlegger. If you decide to make it, please let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for what drink should be your team's representative. Stay curious, stay thirsty, and I'll see you in the next one.